Yet another video with another disclaimer. I got my Steam key for Dream Warrior from Hightower Games for review purposes. As usual for the few times I get keys, there have been no demands or even requests that I say anything in particular. All thoughts from here forward are my own. First things first, I want to apologize to everyone who worked on Dream Warrior. This is also an update for anyone who's been wondering why content's been slow. You see, I got the code for this game in early July. I've gotten a fair handful of offers from shady developers as my channel has grown. Sponsorship offers, codes that ask me to say certain things, nearly all of them have specifically been from studios making gambling and grinding focused life service games, gacha games, or games replete with microtransactions to throw your money away on, asset flips, you know the deal. The email I got from Hightower Games for Dream Warrior was much simpler than most of these, and it seemed completely custom, rather than simply a PR message sent to every content creator under the sun. But at the same time, I didn't have the space in my head to look at it and think it through. Within the space of a few days, I became ill, but I also had to find a way to not ruin a vacation myself and a friend had been planning for realistically at least a year. Lots of time, work, and money had been invested in it, and I also haven't had a real vacation, so to speak, since I was like 15 and my family went to South Dakota. Feeling ill for most of it sucked, but the vacation was fantastic, thanks for asking. Anyway, when I got back home, I had to keep plugging away at my second challenge playthrough I'm doing for a video, meaning it was actually more like my fourth playthrough in the last 5 or so months, which made me almost forget the email. It was only when I also got the email for Tomba Special Edition that I remembered it, but then Tomba felt like it should take priority because I'd explicitly requested that key, and so I already had a responsibility to try and get content for that out on time. Combine that with other things happening, like my best friend breaking his thumb after it had only been healed for a few months from being broken earlier this year, and another video I already had in the works, which combined with the game for the challenge video were taking up like 220 gigs of space on my PS5, and also most of my storage space for footage, and the last few months have been a lot. So TLDR, I wanted to get to this game sooner. If things had gone better, I'd have gotten something in pre-release maybe. But I'm here now, and I've played through Dream Warrior a large handful of times. So what is it, and what do I think of it? Okay, so Dream Warrior is what I'd call a micro-RPG, combined with roguelike elements, and with a dose of NES-stalgia and humor thrown in. Finishing a run through Dream Warrior won't likely take more than 30 minutes to an hour, and in my experience it's not near as hard as most would expect from your usual game with roguelike elements. Which, if you ask me, seems intentional. This feels very much like a game you pay a $5 for, play a handful of times to get 90% of the experience or more, and feel satisfied by what it offered. It's not supposed to be that cold, steep, dangerous mountain you fail to climb for 3 months while you slowly master it. Dream Warrior plays like the Cliff Notes version of a self-aware NES-era JRPG, mostly Dragon Quest. There's no freedom of movement, there isn't a protracted narrative with choreographed cutscenes, there's a world map, and each time you move you get to choose from one or more destinations. Your character moves there, and depending on what you chose, a battle, or a character, a shop, an inn, or a special event will greet you. You gain experience in gold through battles, you gain abilities through leveling and through specific map destinations, and you can buy items and equipment at the shop, and rest for a fee at the inn. Your goal is to take your character all the way to the end and defeat the Demon Lord. Your character can choose one of a couple of classes, more of which can unlock as you play, but his origin is one of a different world. In his own world, he is simply a drunk who is way behind on his rent. But when he downs a bottle of Vice and falls asleep, he enters a world where he can become a hero. It's hard for me to definitively say if Dream Warrior has something in particular to say here, or if it's just being cheeky. Probably a bit of both. But the thing I came away feeling definitively by the end of even just my first play session was that it knew what it wanted to be as a game, as an experiment, an experience, and the devs stayed focused on making a workable vision that could be accomplished. If you're an old school viewer of this channel, you might remember my video on Skylight Free Range, which is an oft-mocked RPG that wasn't considered good enough for Steam by the community, but made its way to PlayStation. And as, at the time of that video's release, the only YouTuber who had actually played more than a couple of hours of the game and had actually finished it and completed all the side content, I felt like Skylight Free Range had a lot of interesting mechanical ideas that you could tell the developer was passionate about exploring, but because they seemed to have refused to keep their vision in check and didn't seem to have the option or interest in getting anyone else on board for visuals, writing, or music, the game suffered heavily. It was a giant idea with lofty goals and without the means to reach 95% of them. Dream Warrior isn't that. I can't tell you how development went here, but what I can say is this feels like a project that got its scope right. I don't think anything in Dream Warrior is going to wow you, but it'll probably get a laugh out of you. It'll almost certainly keep your mind entertained for a few runs due to the low cost but polished reward. There's enough to see and try to keep it feeling fresh for a runtime that justifies its $5 cost on Steam. You can also purchase the game on itch.io if you want to throw them a bit more money as support, and there's a Linux version if that's your thing, presumably for Steam Deck compatibility. Either way, even just trying out the different classes, or trying to figure out what's up with the beggar, or the storyteller, or the lake, will keep you interested. The abilities on offer are numerous enough to still be finding more of them several playthroughs deep, but aren't so numerous that they blend together into a mush of nonsense. I regularly found that whenever I'd begin questioning the point of something, I'd find the answer not long after. The easiest example are the spirits of the different environments, which you can either obtain a permanent skill from, money, or healing. After a couple of playthroughs, I was becoming confused as to why anyone would ever choose the latter two, but once I knew I'd seen every spirit and every ability they offered, I realized that these are here for when you already know exactly what skill you want from which spirit. And yet at the same time, it still might be worth taking just one extra skill from another spirit, because you might find an opportunity to trade it for something else, rather than having to trade a more important skill. It feels thought through, simple but layered. Stat scaling and enemy design are largely simple, but that also means they're easy to understand and strategize around. Status effects are also simple, but that means they were designed to pack a punch. The push and pull of every facet of the game's design, from MP costs to physical versus magical damage to enemy attack options, all of it has clearly delineated purpose that makes the game feel balanced. Even the choice between skipping a battle to head to an inn you don't need, or risking resource depletion in that battle that you can't afford because of things you fear might be coming up, is engaging. Do you want to waste this space, or risk getting into trouble for the chance at extra experience? It's strange, because this is clearly a game for the RPG veteran. You'll almost certainly find it charming if you know the genre well, but it also doesn't stray from or push the mechanical identity of the genre much at all, yet it still is polished enough to stay engaging. It reminds me of Dragon Quest at its best in that way. You'd be hard-pressed to find a game that's more vanilla RPG than a Dragon Quest most of the time, but it does the central pillars of that genre so well when it's firing on all cylinders that simplicity becomes its own reward. I can't really think of much that I didn't like about Dream Warrior. Part of that is probably because there isn't much here to begin with, but part of it is also because despite expectations being modest due to the game's simplicity, they were met handily. The aesthetic is fine enough, the menus are snappy, the save system is good for if you want to put a buffer between you and the roguelike elements, the descriptions for abilities and items are both lively and as descriptive as they need to be to pique curiosity, while still telling you the most important aspects you might want to know. The writing was largely clever, the music is limited but really solid. About the only criticism I can come up with if I really push is that there's no controller support, which could limit console releases or the interest of some people if not updated. I myself was worried going in because I didn't know if the game had any sort of Undertale minigames as part of specific battles, or maybe a haggling system in towns that required precise mouse clicks, some sort of mouse-based minigames. Like, you never know, right? Thankfully, you can very, very easily play this game without a mouse or controller. A trackpad on a laptop works just fine, and I'm sure any controller with a touchpad area that can be mapped to mouse movements would work fine. You could probably also do just fine with gyro mapped to the mouse, or even an analog stick mapped to it as a last resort. The game only really requires a single button and mouse movement to click on menu options. That's it. So even that isn't really something I'd say is a problem with the game, so much as something that might simply limit where the game can be released, and might make some gamepad-centric players hesitant to try. I don't want my conclusion to suggest that Dream Warrior is comfort food or junk food to pass time, but I also do want to stress how low cost it is to try, and how focused of an experience it is. I intentionally avoided saying too much about the things you can find because I don't want to ruin the experience. It's not a game that's going to change your world, and you need to know that going in. But it's also so fuss-free and polished that I find it hard to imagine someone who wouldn't enjoy a couple of runs, outside of the most bitterly pretentious of us. And in my head, a game that basically anyone can enjoy is quite an accomplishment, considering many studios with hundreds of devs, or even thousands if you include outsourced work, 5+ years of dev time, and budgets in the hundreds of millions tried desperately to make games for everyone, and fail miserably. Sure, it's not infinitely replayable, but weirdly enough, I still kinda wanna argue that Dream Warrior is the Tetris of JRPGs.